She trusted him, a man who played the role of a loving partner, a devoted father figure. But on one horrifying night, the mask slipped, revealing a monster capable of unspeakable evil. This is a tragic story of baby Amanda Barrener, a life stolen in the most brutal way imaginable and a mother's nightmare that still echoes today. Warning: this video contains graphic details of violence against an infant. Please proceed with caution, or click away if this subject is too distressing. This is Vic's True Crime Stories, where the darkest cases are uncovered and justice is put on trial. Today's story isn't just about crime, it's about betrayal. Amanda Barrener entered this world in a hushed, sterile room, 8 weeks too soon, her tiny body fighting for every breath. The doctor spoke in careful tones, their words measured, but Amanda refused to listen to the doubts. She would sit for hours in that NICU, her fingertips barely brushing the plastic of the incubator, whispering promises to her daughter. "You're going to be so strong," she'd say, watching the rise and fall of Emily's fragile chest. And slowly, against all odds, Emily began to thrive. Her cheeks filled out, her grip tightened around Amanda's finger. She was alive, truly alive, and that was enough. By the summer of 2016, Amanda had made a decision. She wanted more for her children, more than the struggles they faced, more than the hardships that had followed them like shadows. So she packed their lives into boxes and moved them to West Virginia, where the hills rolled green and the air smelled like possibility. It was there, in that small town where everyone knew each other's names, that Benjamin Taylor walked into their lives. He was the kind of man who made an impression, not because he was loud or brash, but because of the way he listened. When Amanda talked about her kids, he didn't just nod, he remembered. He'd bring Emily a stuffed animal, something soft and small, and he'd kneel down to her older siblings' level when he spoke to them. It wasn't an act. At least, it didn't seem like one. Amanda had been alone for so long. She carried the weight of everything by herself. The bills, the worries, the endless nights of rocking a crying baby while trying to soothe her own fears. But Benjamin made her feel like she didn't have to do it all alone. He'd show up with groceries when money was tight. He'd take the kids to the park so she could sleep. And when Emily fussed in the middle of the night, he was the one who'd get up whispering, "I've got her, Amanda. Rest." It was easy to trust him. Too easy. Because no one could have known. Not Amanda, not her children, not the neighbors who waved at Benjamin like he was just another kind face in their community. What was really hiding behind those quiet smiles? No one could have guessed that the man who rocked Emily to sleep, who fixed the squeaky step on the porch, who held Amanda's hand like she was something precious, was capable of what came next. But on October 2nd, 2016, the truth would tear through their lives like a storm. The night of October 2nd, 2016, started like any other. Amanda tucked her 3 older children into bed, kissing their foreheads as they drifted off to sleep. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that usually meant peace. Emily, her 9-month-old baby girl, was still awake. Benjamin offered to stay up with her. "You get some rest," he told Amanda. "I've got her." Amanda trusted him. That was her mistake. Somewhere in the dead of night, something shifted. Maybe it was a mother's instinct, that deep primal knowing that pulled Amanda from sleep. The clock read 4 a.m. The house was too quiet. No baby sounds. No soft murmurs from Benjamin. Just silence. Heavy. Wrong. She called out for Benjamin. No answer. Her bare feet hit the floor before she even realized she was moving. Down the hallway. Down the stairs. The basement door was slightly open. A sliver of light spilled out. What she saw when she stepped inside would haunt her forever. Benjamin was on his knees, his pants undone, and Emily, her baby, her tiny, fragile Emily, lay naked on the cold concrete, covered in blood, bruised, barely breathing. Amanda's scream tore through the house. She lunged at Benjamin, hitting him, screaming at him, her voice raw with a pain no mother should ever have to feel. She grabbed Emily, holding her close, begging her to hold on, to stay with her, as she dialed 911 with shaking hands. The operator answered. Amanda's voice was shattered glass. I think that scumbag hurt her. At the hospital, doctors worked frantically, but the damage was too severe. Skull fractures, blunt force trauma covering nearly every inch of her small body, evidence of smothering, and worse, far worse, injuries no child should ever suffer. Emily fought. She fought so hard. But some battles are too cruel, even for the strongest among us. And as Emily clung to life by the thinnest of threads, Benjamin's story started to crack. His lies didn't hold up. His excuses fell apart. Because while he claimed he couldn't remember, couldn't explain, his phone told a different story. A story of guilt. A story of evil. The hospital walls had barely stopped echoing with Amanda's sobs when the police began their work. Benjamin Taylor sat in the interrogation room, his story shifting like sand. First, he claimed he didn't remember. Then, he said he must have blacked out. His voice was calm, too calm, as if he were discussing the weather rather than the broken body of a 9-month-old child. But detectives had seen this before. The act, the performance, and they knew exactly where to look for the truth. Benjamin's phone became the smoking gun. While he insisted his memory was blank, his search history told a different story. Timestamps placed him online at the exact moment of the attack. The queries were specific, clinical, the kind of searches no innocent man would make while holding a baby. Then came the trial. The courtroom buzzed with tension as Benjamin's family took the stand. His own mother, her voice dripping with contempt, accused Amanda of exaggerating her grief. She was acting, the woman claimed, as if a mother's scream upon finding her dying child could ever be rehearsed. Benjamin's father went further, painting his son as the real victim, a good man caught in a tragic misunderstanding. But the jury saw through it. They listened to the doctors describe Emily's injuries in grim detail. They watched the 911 call footage, seeing Amanda's raw terror frozen in time. They held the medical reports in their hands, each page heavier than the last. When the verdict came, it took them just 2 hours. Guilty on all counts. First-degree murder, sexual assault resulting in death, child abuse. For the first time since that night, Benjamin Taylor showed emotion. Not when Emily's injuries were described. Not when Amanda wept on the stand. But when the judge handed down his sentence, life plus 40 years, the tears finally came. Self-pity, not remorse. The gavel fell. Justice, at least in a legal sense, had been served. Yet as Amanda left the courtroom that day, clutching Emily's tiny hat, the last thing her baby had worn before the attack, one question hung in the air, thick and suffocating. How? How does a man look into an infant's eyes and choose to destroy her? How does evil like this exist in the same world as lullabies and stuffed animals and first steps? Some questions have no answers, only echoes. In the quiet hours when the world sleeps, Amanda sometimes sits with Emily's things. A tiny sock that still smells faintly of baby powder. A rattle with the paint worn off from being clutched in small hands. And the letter, the one she wrote but never got to read to her daughter. My sweet Emily, it begins, the words blurred in places where tears fell. You were so small when you came into this world, but you were mighty. You fought so hard to stay. I wish you hadn't had to fight so hard at the end. The pages tremble when Amanda holds them. She talked about Emily's first smile, how it came unexpectedly one morning, like the sun breaking through clouds. She describes the way Emily would kick her legs with delight at the sound of her siblings' laughter, the way she'd press her tiny palm against Amanda's cheek as if memorizing her mother's face. You were starting to stand, Amanda writes. You'd pull yourself up on the coffee table, so proud, your eyes shining. I thought I'd see you take your first steps. I thought I'd hear you say, Mama. I thought we had time. The letter continues, spilling over with all the memories that now live in photographs and aching hearts. Birthday cakes that will never be eaten. First days of school that will never come. A future stolen, in the cruelest way imaginable. Emily's story doesn't end with the gavel's fall, or the prison doors closing. It continues in every parent who now checks the locks twice before bed. In every caregiver who listens more closely to their instincts. In every person who hears a child cry and doesn't look away. Because monsters don't always lurk in shadows. Sometimes they stand in the kitchen making breakfast. Sometimes they bounce babies on their knees at family gatherings. Sometimes they look so ordinary that the truth, when it comes, seems impossible. But it happens. It happened to Emily. So we remember her, not just as a victim, but as a bright-eyed baby who loved the sound of lullabies, who had a giggle that made the whole room light up, who deserved so much more than she was given. And in remembering, we make a silent promise to watch more closely, to listen more carefully, to speak more boldly when something feels wrong. Because children are the most vulnerable among us, and their safety isn't just a parent's duty, it's everyone's responsibility. Emily's life was short, but its impact stretches far beyond those 9 months. In her name, may we find the courage to protect what matters most. Stories like Emily's are not easy to hear. They leave us with a heaviness in our chests, a sickness in our stomachs, and questions that may never have answers. But we cannot look away, not because we want to dwell on the darkness, but because remembering these stories matters. Because Emily mattered. If her story has stayed with you, if you found yourself holding your own children a little tighter tonight, or thinking about how fragile innocence truly is, then let that feeling mean something. Share her story, not for the sake of shock, but for the sake of awareness. Talk about the signs that are too often missed. Listen to the instincts we too often ignore. And most of all, remember that evil thrives in silence, but it withers under the light. So like this video if you believe these stories need to be told with care. Subscribe if you want to stand with those who give victims like Emily a voice. And share responsibly, because awareness can be the difference between tragedy and prevention. And if today's story has left you hurting, please don't carry that weight alone. Reach out, speak to someone. Because no one should have to sit with this kind of pain by themselves. Emily's life was short, but it was not small. And if we let her story change us, even just a little, then her light hasn't gone out. It simply passed to us. Good night, everyone. Hold your loved ones close.